The chemical element oganesson occupies position 118 on the periodic table as the heaviest synthetic noble gas ever discovered. Yet in the metaphysical framework of the oak matrix, it serves as the ultimate anchor for what author Joe Bandel describes as a unity level of consciousness. We are examining Anchor 11 today, specifically looking at how first imprints, tantric acceleration, and energetic distortions dictate the way human souls specialize and store energy. It's a heavy concept to start with, especially when Bandel suggests that the very first physical sexual union creates a permanent energetic cord that biases a person's entire future cycle of resonance.
It is a foundational claim in his work, and it really shifts the conversation from biological reproduction to what he calls energetic gestation. To understand Anchor 11, we have to look at his view of the female soul as a containing vessel. He argues that each female soul specializes in generating one primary type of noble gas energy based on her current developmental stage. This isn't just a metaphor for mood or personality. He's talking about a literal frequency that aligns with the noble gases we find in chemistry, like neon or argon. The first imprint he mentions is essentially a mechanical binding. When that first union occurs, an energetic cord is established between the female's vessel and the male's outward surge. This lock, as he calls it, essentially presets the vessel's capacity to that specific initial resonance.
The idea of a mechanical binding sounds incredibly deterministic, almost like a hardware lock on a computer. If this first encounter sets the resonance for every future cycle, it implies that most people are walking around with their energetic potential capped by a past event they might not even remember or value anymore. How does Bandel justify this virgin secret without it sounding like some archaic moral code disguised as metaphysics?
He actually distinguishes this sharply from moralism. For him, it's a matter of energetic physics. Think of it like a new clay pot being fired for the first time. That first firing sets the shape. In the oak matrix, this isn't about purity in a religious sense. It's about the frequency of the container. If that first imprint isn't consciously addressed, the woman's energy system will continue to resonate with that initial frequency, which might be much lower than her actual potential. This is where he introduces tantric acceleration. He argues that ordinary people stay locked in these imprints, but a trained tantrika, someone who has mastered conscious control over their energy, can transcend that binding. This mastery allows them to reach the oganesson level, which he equates with unity. It's the process of resetting the vessel to hold the highest possible frequency rather than being stuck with whatever was imprinted decades ago.
So the reset isn't just about moving on emotionally. It's a technical procedure involving what he calls loving cord release and intentional dream work. But I want to push back on the oganesson metaphor for a second. In actual science, oganesson is highly unstable. According to the Royal Society of Chemistry, it has a half-life of less than a millisecond, and only a few atoms have ever even been synthesized. If that's the unity level we're aiming for, it seems like a fleeting, nearly impossible state to maintain. Is that intentional in his theory? Is unity supposed to be that elusive?
That's a fascinating connection to the physical science. In the context of the oak matrix, oganesson represents the edge of the known, the most complex and heavy state of being. While physicists struggle to keep an atom of oganesson stable in a lab, Bandel suggests that through tantric mastery, a human can inhabit that unity frequency. The instability in the physical world might actually mirror the difficulty of maintaining a state of total integration in a dualistic world. He speaks of divine counterpart unification, where all layers of the etheric and astral bodies are integrated into a single whole. It's about moving from a state of being fragmented by past imprints to a state where the male expansive flow and the female containing gestation meet to generate what he calls activated bodies. It's a synthesis of polarities.
He also mentions everyday evidence for this, specifically pointing to dreams of pregnancy and birth. He's not talking about these as symbols of a new job or a creative project, which is how most Jungian analysts would read them. He claims these are literal astral births. That's a huge leap. He's saying that an exchange can occur in the astral plane, even if there's no physical union, and that this completes an energetic layer. How does that reconcile with his earlier point about the physical first imprint being the primary binder?
It seems he sees the astral as the working space where the actual construction of our energetic bodies happens. If a woman dreams of giving birth, he views that as the literal manifestation of an activated body, either for herself or for a resonant partner. The interesting part is that the father energy in these dreams might be someone unknown or distant in waking life. This suggests that the energetic exchange is more about the frequency match than the physical person. It broadens the scope of what we consider creation. But you're right to point out the tension. If the first physical union is so powerful that it locks the vessel, then these astral births are presumably either limited by that lock, or they are the tool used to break it. He suggests that intentional dream work is one of the primary ways to free the cycle from the first imprint limitation.
We have to address the darker side of this because Bandel doesn't shy away from it. He talks about distortions, cases where the cycle is forced or violated, like in sexual abuse or slavery. He characterizes these as parasitic, where energy is extracted without a reciprocal birth. He even links this to the origins of vampire and succubus myths. It's a provocative claim that systematic abuse creates permanent drain cords. If these cords are as permanent as he says the first imprint is, it paints a very grim picture for survivors.
It does, but he provides a counter mechanism. He is very clear that release is always possible through conscious will. This is a vital part of his general field theory. If the binding is energetic, then the solution must be energetic. He argues that these parasitic cords, where one person's energy is being siphoned to feed another without anything being born or created, are the root of what we call soul loss. But the oak matrix is based on the idea of duality as a loving embrace. This means that even these distortions can be resolved when the individual exerts their will and uses loving cord release. He insists that all exchanges must be consensual and mutual. In his view, the abuse isn't just a moral failing, it's a structural violation of the laws of energetic gestation. It blocks the victim's ability to activate their higher bodies.
It's a perspective that turns ethics into a form of spiritual ecology. But I find the vampire analogy interesting because it suggests that the predator is actually dependent on the stolen noble gas energy because they can't generate it themselves. In this model, the human slave trade and systematic abuse aren't just about power or money, they're about an energetic deficit in the perpetrator. It's a radical way of looking at historical trauma. He says this protects generational continuity. Does he mean that these imprints and drain cords can be passed down?
Exactly. He views these energetic structures as part of the human inheritance. If a cycle is blocked or a drain cord is established, it doesn't just affect the individual, it impacts the soil from which future trees or souls grow. He uses the analogy of oak acorns gravitating to fertile soil. For a new tree to grow, the soil has to be right. If the energetic environment is full of parasitic cords and outdated imprints, the birth of new unified consciousness is stifled. That's why he emphasizes that the cycle of resonance is temporary. We are supposed to come together, grow, birth something new, whether that's a physical child or an activated astral body, and then release. The problem arises when we try to possess or enslave that energy rather than allowing it to evolve.
He defines love in a very structural way here. It's not about sentiment. It's about a structural interdependence, where male expansive flow and female containing gestation work together without possession. It reminds me of how researchers like Suzanne Simard describe the wood wide web, the fungal networks that allow trees to share nutrients. In Bandel's universal grove, the exchange is the point, but the goal is always the evolution of both parties. But if the goal is to eventually release, doesn't that undermine the idea of a divine counterpart? Usually when people talk about twin flames or divine partners, they mean forever. Bandel seems to be saying, until the work is done.
That's a key distinction in the oak matrix. He describes the unification as the integration of all layers into a single etheric astral whole. This doesn't necessarily mean two people stay together in a conventional sense for eternity. It means the integration is permanent. Once you've achieved that oganesson level unity, you've fundamentally changed your energetic structure. You've birthed a new version of yourself. The loving embrace is the mechanism for that growth. Once the acorn has become a tree, it doesn't need to stay attached to the soil in the same way. The resonance has served its purpose. It's a very non-possessive view of spirituality. It prioritizes the soul wholeness over the relationship container.
I'm still thinking about the virgin secret and the potential for abuse of that concept. In many cultures, the emphasis on the first has been used to control and shame women. Bandel is using it to describe a mechanical binding that needs to be broken to reach maturity. It's a fine line. He's essentially saying the first time you have sex, you're branded energetically, and you need a high-level tantric practice to get that brand off. It places a lot of pressure on tantric mastery as the only way out of a default biased state.
It does, and he admits that his work is compressed and difficult to grasp. He even suggests using AI like Grok to help process it because the concepts are so distilled. But he also mentions loving will as a path to release, not just complex tantric rituals. This suggests that deep, intentional love has a natural reset capability. The tantric acceleration is just a way to speed up what might otherwise take lifetimes of intense living. He's trying to provide a technical manual for something that usually happens unconsciously. By making the mechanical nature of these chords visible, he's trying to give people the tools to consciously choose their resonance rather than being victims of their history.
So if we look at the 5 dimensions of this, historically, it ties into ancient concepts of soul ties, or the Christian idea of one flesh, mentioned in the Gospel of Mark, but strips away the religious dogma in favor of an energetic, unified field theory. Technically, it's about the specialization of noble gas frequencies within the chakra system. Culturally, it offers a new way to understand the vampirism of abuse and the necessity of consent. The nuance is that duality isn't the enemy, it's the engine of creation, provided it's a loving embrace and not a war.
And the big takeaway is that we aren't just biological accidents or products of our past. We are containing vessels that have the capacity to hold the highest frequencies of the universe if we learn to manage our energetic chords. The oak matrix suggests that just as an acorn has the entire blueprint of a tree within it, we have the blueprint of oganesson unity within us. The work is simply removing the distortions and imprints that keep us from vibrating at that level. It's a radical call for self-responsibility and energetic hygiene.
It turns the bedroom and the dream world into a laboratory for soul evolution. Whether you believe in astral births or not, the idea that our past encounters leave a resonance bias is something that mirrors our psychological reality. We do tend to repeat patterns from our early experiences. Bandel just gives those patterns a chemical and metaphysical weight, suggesting that we have a literal energetic anatomy that needs as much care as our physical bodies. If you found this exploration of the oak matrix and the mechanics of energetic imprints intriguing, pass this episode along to someone who's looking for a deeper way to understand their own history and potential.